You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
All right, here we are, Toronto Sports Rush, McGuire Monday. The Leafs are on a 5-game losing streak, Pierre. On a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you?
I'm a bit concerned, Sarah, and a big reason why. So if I were going to say 10 is the worst, 1 is the best, I'm probably around a 6.5 right now, and I'll tell you why. The injury situation, no Auston Matthews is obviously troubling. And then you look at no Brandon Carlo the other day, no Scott Laughton, no Christopher Tanev, no Marshall Rafai, no Anthony Stolars. You start to get worried.
Yes. And these are kind of glue guys, you know what I mean? You got Tanev, who is such a huge fixture with the kind of new regime of these Leafs. So when he's gone, Laughton, like, extremely important in the room, right? It's kind of guys all over the lineup, and they all provide different roles, and they're all out. So this is bad. Wool's coming back, though.
Yeah, no, Joe Wool coming back, and I thought he played relatively well on Saturday night in Chicago, Sarah. And, you know, the biggest thing about Chicago, it wasn't about the goaltending, really wasn't about the overall team defense. My biggest concern was Matthew Knies, no shots. William Nylander, no shots. Mateus Michelli, no shots. If those guys are getting no shots, you got no chance. And that's just where it is right now. And part of that is, to your point, Sarah, which I think is a great one, it's about the slotting of players. So when Auston Matthews is in the lineup, John Tavares plays in the 2-hole. When Scott Laughton is in the lineup, Nick Roy probably plays in the 3 or the 4-hole. So the other night, Nick Roy was playing in the 2-hole. So the slotting gets affected by those injuries. And I think we can be fair about this, and I don't think Auston would be mad about it. He's been rather pedestrian this year. I don't think he's been superstar Auston Matthews that everybody was expecting.
I mean, we start to wonder, is he going to recreate that goal-scoring season that he had a few seasons ago? This injury situation with him specifically, you wonder if it's something nagging that's been the same issue reoccurring. It's been kind of hush-hush. So what's your take on that?
Well, I understand that teams want to save the player because targeting does happen, and I can put my hand up and say, trust me when I tell you I drew up game plans when we knew guys were susceptible to certain injury situations, we would take advantage of it. That's just the nature of the beast. It's not a very friendly game, and it's played by ornery people on a slippery surface. So a lot of stuff can happen. So I don't blame the Leafs for that, protecting the player, and I don't blame Auston for not wanting to reveal too much. But I don't think he's shooting the puck the same way. I don't think he's dominating the puck the same way. I know he misses Mitchell Marner. I think we all know that now. I'm more concerned about Matthew Knies. You know, this is a huge year for Matthew Knies in a lot of ways. Number one, obviously, a lot of people thought he'd pick up some of the slack from Mitchell Marner moving on. But number two, Sarah, and think about, he's got a legitimate chance to be on the U.S. Olympic team. I'm not sure I'm seeing that Olympic ability right now. And that's something that's starting to be troublesome to look at.
At his best, Team USA could really use that net front presence, and like what he does as a player is so effective. But you're seeing it with everybody on this team on this power play, and him specifically, that's his role, right? To be in front of the net, getting those like greasy goals. And he just is not doing that. And that has been like a huge problem for the Leafs right now.
You know, Sarah, such a good point. And this is what I thought about going into the season. I really was concerned about this. Producer Tim will back me up on it. You know, Kyle backed me up on it. All the people that I've had the opportunity to work with. I thought one of the holes of this team was going to be the power play quarterback. That's not a shot at Morgan Riley. But Mitchell Marner did an amazing job. I'm not sure Mark Savard, who coaches a power play, has adjusted particularly well to not having a pure quarterback, number one. And number two, Matthew Knies has done a great job providing that net front presence like a Chris Kreider did with the Rangers or does with Anaheim right now. Those players are important. It's not always a sexy way to make a living. It just isn't, but you need those players. And right now, it's not happening for Toronto. The power play is very underwhelming.
Such a great point about the Ducks, too, because look how they turned it around, kind of with like, you got Trouba, you got Kreider, and you have those young kids. And then it's the impact of somebody like Kreider who can really change the complexion of a team. And you wonder what it's going to take for Knies right now.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is he's just got to look in the mirror. And I've had players like this. I don't want to say their names because I have so much respect for the guys I coached over the years. But I've had players go through this too. You know, he's not the first player to experience a slump, and he won't be the last. But he's going to have to probably look in the mirror here pretty quick and say, okay, what did I do well last year that I'm not doing this year? And I'm sure the coaches are pointing out to him. It's not that he's not trying. I think he is trying. I think he's trying to figure out how he has to try maybe a little differently without having an amazingly good right winger like a guy like Mitchell Marner. They just don't have that. They don't have that
It's
player.
a lot of pressure, right, to kind of like fill the hole that Marner left. And that's just not, you can't really look at it like you're going to do that, right? It's like, okay, how do we just kind of adjust in his absence? And then you think about the trade or the free agency market last summer was not great. So they couldn't really do much to fill that hole on the market. Do you think you look at the trade market now and think maybe they can make a few moves there?
At some point, I think they're going to have to. My only concern for Toronto is they don't have a lot of depth in the arsenal in terms of players that they own that are either drafted players or players that are on their roster right now. The injury thing with Scott Laughton set them back. Laughton was really, if you remember back to the preseason, Scott Laughton might have been their most consistent player. He was having an amazing preseason. And I was like, okay, this is great for Toronto. Then you lose him. And then his first game back, he gets wiped out by Zadorov, which was a clean hit, but totally clean hit. He gets wiped out by him. And now you're all of a sudden, okay, all that planning we did in the preseason, that's all gone. And so now you got to find a way to adapt and overcome. Use the famous line from the U.S. Marine Corps, adapt and overcome. They haven't done it yet. And so I think internally, this is where Brad Treliving is really going to earn his money. This is where I think there's got to be, and I hate to say this, but truth serum. There has to be a relationship between the head coach and the GM. What do you need, coach? How can I help you make it better? And the coach can't sugarcoat it. He's got to say, I need this, I need this, I need this, without the general manager feeling like he let the coach down. Where teams get into trouble is, and I've been in those meetings, the GM says to the coach, what do you need? And the coach says, well, I need this and I need this. And the GM says, well, I gave that to you. And the coach goes, well, what you gave me isn't good enough. And then it starts to fray. I'm not saying that's happening now, but that's the kind of conversation that has to happen,
You know
Sara.
what?
It really
It's interesting
does.
because when I was in Carolina covering the Hurricanes, I talked to Rod Brindamore about this a lot. And like, if you read between the lines of what he had said, you know how they are, where they can kind of like get to the ECF and then it's like the scoring dries up. And he just says, we need a scorer. Like he'll say that at the end in that press conference. And it's just like, sometimes there is that hole and there's something that a coach needs to identify to the GM. And it's like, can you go get me this guy or can you not? And then with that 2006 team too, I was on the phone with Aaron Ward talking about this before and he was just like, I knew that they invested in us because they went out and got these players. They got Ray Whitney. You know what I mean?
You got Mark
Yeah.
Recchi,
Yeah.
Ray Whitney, and Dougie
Yeah.
Weight. Oh, I
You,
remember it clear as
sure you
day.
do.
Even Brett
Yeah.
Hedican. They went out and got a lot of guys. They had already had Stahl. They had already had Brindamore. They needed more. And so Jimmy Rutherford, and part of that too, by the way, nobody ever talks about this. Jimmy Rutherford had an amazing relationship with Bobby Orr. And Bobby Orr's agency represented a lot of those players. And so they knew those players might become available. And they went out and they did I'm telling you, Sara, that's a really good example you just raised. The '06 Carolina Hurricanes are coming out of the nuclear winter, no hockey. The rules had changed. The red line was out. Zero tolerance and obstruction. Teams were trying to figure out, how are we going to do this? It's really interesting you would bring them up. They're the first team to win the Stanley Cup coming into the new rules and the salary cap. Their coach, Peter Laviolette, at that time, was the only coach besides a guy he coached in the final, Craig McTavish, who played the game without the red line in college.
Wow.
McTavish played at the University of Massachusetts at Lowell, and Laviolette played at Westfield State in Division III. They're the only two coaches that year that played without the red line. Isn't it interesting that both teams that they coached got to the Stanley Cup final?
That actually is fascinating. I did not know that. We got our tidbits on McGuire Monday, okay? we got them covered. But they are entering a new salary cap era now too, with the cap is raising, obviously, the Marner situation. And it's like, I wonder what the trade market's going to look like this season because teams couldn't make that many moves this offseason. And then you're seeing the kind of deals being made right now. It's the last year in which people could have 8-year contracts. So we're seeing a lot of term, but we're also seeing kind of stagnation in the market where there's not free agents hitting the market. You know what I mean? Because they want that 8-year contract. So the Leafs are in a pickle coming into this trade deadline of like, it's going to be interesting, right? Like, what's your take on this upcoming trade deadline?
I love that you would bring that up. So this is the first time I've ever said this in 37 years around the National Hockey League. This is a time where if you don't have a creative owner who's not afraid to open his pocket, if you don't have a very creative and smart general manager, and if you don't have an elite pro scouting staff, chances are you're not winning the Stanley Cup. More times than not, when we go into a season, we talk about what's this coaching staff going to be like? What's the star player of this team going to be like? Who's going to have the best depth on defense or the best goaltending or the best power play? It's the first time I can tell you in 37 years, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about which owners prepared to dig deep, which general managers prepared to trust their pro scouting staff, and which pro scouting staff has the vision to go out and get the right players to help the coaching staff. And the reason why is we haven't had expansion in a long time. So the talent bucket is full. Teams are keeping their potential unrestricted free agents, so there's less free agency flooding the market. And then the final thing, to your point, which I thought was really appropriate, this is the last year where you can keep players for 8 years or in their contract situation. So all that being said, people aren't losing assets. And so there's more parity than ever before. Look at all the overtime games we're seeing. Look at all the shootout games we're seeing. Look at how many teams are still available to play in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Outside of Buffalo, I think most teams think they still have a fighting chance. But if you look in the West, I think St. Louis figures they might not have a chance. You can look around. Calgary probably feels they probably don't have a chance. But if you look in the West, there's maybe 2 or 3 teams. In the East, there's only 1. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to make deals.
You know what? You bring up such a good point about the overtimes and all the loser point of it all right now. And it's like the Leafs are in a pickle right now. I think we can all agree on that. We can agree that they need more scoring on the power play. They need to figure out the goal. Like, obviously, Woll coming back could be huge for a little stabilization, but they're unstable. They're playing unconfident. They're injured, and they need they need more depth for sure, but also they have an opportunity with the amount. It's like every team is above 500 except the Leafs and the Sabres in the East, I believe. And it's like the Leafs could turn this around if they get it together, right? Like it's like the teams are very close in the East right now.
They really are. One of the things I like what the Leafs did, and I know it's not a big name player, but getting Troy Stetcher, it really gives him mobility and a slick stick on the back end, and a guy that's been deep in some playoff runs, especially with this time with Edmonton. Didn't mean he was playing, but he was around it, had a lot of experience. I watched this kid play for 3 years with the Penticton Vees in the BCHL. He was a great player. I watched him play for 3 years at University of North Dakota. Phenomenal player. I called some of his first ever playoff games playing with the Vancouver Canucks. This kid's a good player. It was a slick pickup. The only reason he got exposed is because Edmonton had protection issues. That's it. That's all. He can help them. Doesn't mean he's a keeper playing in your top 4. Please don't misunderstand. But he's going to help them. Philippe Myers is having a tough time right now. He's having a really tough time playing. They're both right-hand shots. I got to believe going into the game on Tuesday night with St. Louis, Toronto will have Troy Stetcher in the lineup, and I would be surprised if Philippe Myers was in the lineup.
I'm with you on that one, where he might need to look at himself in the mirror. I think it's a lot of, like you said first, that's been ringing in my head since we started this discussion. Like, I think a lot of these players do need to look at themselves in the mirror and kind of be, hey, I'm a good hockey player. Like, I need to act like it.
Yeah. No, that's good. The best coaches, after every game, they go back, whether it's to their hotel room or they go work out to get the stress out. And afterwards, they take a shower or whatever, and they look in the mirror and they say, what I like tonight, what didn't I like tonight?
So
Though the best coaches have that conversation with themselves almost every single day.
If you're Craig Berube and you're looking at this recent stretch, what are you saying to yourself in the mirror?
We got to fix our power play. We have to have a real heart and soul discussion about what's our ideology on the power play. How are we going to overcome the loss of Auston? How do we do a better job with our quarterback on the power play in the back end, whomever it might be. How do we make Matthew Knies more of a threat on the power play? So I'm talking about power play in particular. Then I'm talking about how are we going to fix our end zone coverage? It's good some nights and it's leaky other nights. So how do we become more consistent? I'll give you an example. Bobby McMahon's a really good player. The first Chicago goal the other night, Bobby McMahon loses left Schoenoff in end zone coverage. I know it's a long shift and he's tired. They should have had a switch call up high. It's just fundamental hockey. You know McMahon's out of gas and his partner knows he's out of gas, but instead they engage man-to-man. Bobby loses his guy left Schoenoff and eventually ends up in the back of the net on a cross-box feed. And that's all because up high the end zone coverage broke down. So they need to find a way where they communicate better with their end zone coverage. We saw it time in and time out the other night. The thing that is worrisome to me, if you look at the loss to Boston 5-3, the loss to Carolina 5-4, the loss at Boston 5-3, in 3 games they gave up 15 goals, 3 in a row. That's end zone coverage. You can't. They can try to blame the goalie. You give up 5 in a game 3 times in a row. That's your end zone coverage.
Something's off. It's like it's not connecting, like you said, and the examples are great. And I'm wondering, you think about the injuries, how much of these fundamental issues can be alleviated when the team gets a little healthier?
I think a lot of them can. Austin's got to be a really important player. I think Brandon Carlo has been underwhelming so far. I know Brandon's game really well. I think he will be better. Getting Tanev back would be massive. I just don't know, how long he's going to be gone. We haven't seen a report on that from anybody, I don't believe. And then finally, obviously, Scott Laughton. When you have Laughton, it changes the slotting. So if you have 4 players back, let's just say you get Matthews, Laughton, Tanev, and Carlo back, that changes the whole team.
It does.
It changes the whole team. And then you can work on all the other stuff.
I'm with you on that. I think we are not we love to kind of catastrophize about the Leafs because of, they're in Toronto and it is the season after Mitch Marner, it's all eyes on Toronto all the time. But your point stands, and I am with you on that where it comes to the injuries are very significant here. And it's you can see that in the end zone coverage, like you said, where it's they aren't connecting because some of those guys expected to make those quieter plays aren't on the ice right now.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very fair. And let's not forget, I love the fact that Joe Woll is back. I think that's great. And he sure seemed really happy the other night, even though they lost. Just to see the enthusiasm was really important. But I think their team is a 1A, 1B. So they need Stolarz back too. And that's not a knock on Hildeby. Hildeby's got to go back to the American Hockey League, do his chores for a little bit longer. And eventually I think he'll be a guy that has a chance to be really good in Toronto for the NHL team, not the AHL team. But I think there's just some work to be done. And they need to have that depth and goal as well.
For sure. All right. We got Leafs versus Blues tomorrow, a little Craig Berube revenge tour, if you will. What do you think the Leafs can turn it around tomorrow?
I think if they play the same way they did in Chicago and take some of the errors out of their defensive zone coverage, I think they can. They know they've got 6 games this week when you think about home against St. Louis, home against Columbus, and then on the road in Montreal with a Montreal Canadiens team that's kind of like a mash unit like Toronto is too, Sara. They could put 6 points in the bank this week. I was telling producer Tim before, if they put 6 points in the bank in these next 3 games, all this stuff we just talked about, that goes away. That goes away, Sara. But they got to do it. I mean, talk is cheap. They got to find a way, and it starts Tuesday night against the St. Louis Blues.
It's a perfect opportunity to start, and you're so right with the context of the Atlantic and the East in general right now. 3 games, 6 points in the bank, you can turn this around.
Oh, absolutely. Again, there are a lot of teams banged up in the Eastern Conference. And I'm not afraid of any team in the Metro. And I know New Jersey's a good team, but they don't have Jack Hughes.
What a terrible situation.
And who knows how long Jack's going to be gone for, right?
You're saying months.
So I was with their general manager the other day up in Canton, New York. We were celebrating the life of the former Devils general manager and the Penguins general manager, Ray Sherrill. And Tommy and I were talking about it. He goes, Pierre, I'm just going to tell you straight up, it was a freak accident. He slipped and fell and cut his hand, and it could be a long time. Could be a long time. So I'm not afraid of any team in the Metro. If I'm a team in the Atlantic, I'm not afraid of it. And look at how fluctuating the power position is in the Atlantic, or in the Atlantic.
100%.
Look at how it's unbelievable. It's
It's
amazing.
really like we haven't seen something like this in a while. So that's where we get to tell Leafs fans don't panic because they really can turn it
Right.
around.
I really believe they can. And if they don't, I'm prepared to say right now, I misread this team. I got it completely wrong. And I got to do a better job evaluating. Because I can tell you, before the season started, I thought this team would be a lot better than what the pundits said. And right now it looks like I got it wrong and the pundits got it right.
I mean, like we said, though, there's a lot of injuries. We still need to see. This is going to be a fascinating trade deadline because there was not much cooking on the offseason in free agency at all for any team. So I think this season requires some patience before we give it to the pundits for being right about the Leafs, or we can pat ourselves on the back maybe later. We do have to see. It's to be determined.
To be determined, TBD. Totally agree. Can I say one thing
Yes.
to all our viewers and listeners? Thank you, Sara, for knowing the difference between pain and injury. I respect you so much for playing her today. Thanks a lot,
Yes,
kiddo.
I woke up under the
Appreciate
weather,
it.
doing my best. But
Thank
Pierre,
you.
thank you for bearing
Thank
with
you.
me. Our staff here, just incredible. Thank you guys for being so kind and bearing with me. And thank you, listeners, for bearing with me as well. And thank you, Pierre, for your thoughts every Monday, especially this one.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.